I hit continue.
There you go. So welcome. Nice to meet you.
Thank you. Same here. I've been
To
anticipating seeing you.
Me too. I've heard a lot about you, but I have no ideas. So to start off with, would you just like to say your name and where you are right now?
Mary Ann Rainey, and I am in Chicago in the USA, Chicago, Illinois.
All right. And the first question for you is, who are you as a human being? And that can be anything you'd like to share about yourself. Qualities, values, passions, whatever you'd like.
At this moment, I've seen a few of the interviews, and I didn't know if you would ask every person that question. And then I thought about it, and I said, probably my first response is that I'm just grateful. I'm a grateful human being. I have just been so thankful for having the last 14 months that, on the one hand, have been full of loss and pain of friends and my routine and connections. And at the same time, I found myself just learning about myself, learning about who I am in my relationship with my husband, who he is, who we are together, and learning about ways to adapt my work and even innovate, going beyond adaptation, which is part of something that I'm keenly interested in. So I'm just grateful. I'm a grateful human being. Other aspects of who I am, given the context of our world, it has been so much part of my awareness that I am Black and I'm a woman. And with Black Lives Matter and hashtag Me Too, there's no way that I could escape that part, that aspect of my identity. So that is uppermost for me. I am a learner. I talked about my gratitude because I've been learning so much over the last 14 months. I am a lifelong learner. I just love learning. And maybe sometimes I overfunction in that way, that I want to learn too much. I need to stop sometimes. But I do like that I am open to learning and sharing my knowledge. So if I say I'm a learner, I'm also a sharer of my knowledge when someone is open and willing to consider it. I don't do it intentionally, but if there's someone who can benefit from it, I like that. I am an introvert. It's off the scale. I tell other introverts that I probably will trip you get to the end of the introversion continuum because I am an introvert, and I am also a socialized extrovert. People don't know it because of what I do. I can get into role and show up as an extrovert. I can share my thoughts publicly. I can talk through my thoughts, and I have become more comfortable with that over the years. Okay, I'm here. I'll say to myself, let me just say I'm not ready, and also say more as things are sort of converging in my heart, in my mind, in my soul, and my spirit. I've become more comfortable with also being a socialized extrovert. Mm-hmm. So I am a mother. I am a grandmother. I spend my time walking. I meditate. I do walking meditation. I didn't go into any formal training about it. I just wanted to find a way of maintaining my health that was comfortable for me. So years ago, I joined athletic clubs and have exercise equipment, or I was a jogger for a while, and I have a situation with one of my knees. I have a bursa cyst. I don't know if they call it, but I have a small cyst, and when I would run, I would aggravate that. So I began walking. And as I look back on my mother's life, my mother was a walker. So I guess I'm just genetically inclined to walk, but I can walk long distances. So and if I walk long distances, I find that I go into sort of a meditative state. So I do walking meditation. Sometimes it gets me in trouble because I'll be in a country and I'm walking and I lose myself in my walking and meditations. I guess when the endorphins kick in and I go into a lull, and then you talked about your dogs before we came, and then I'll hear dog barking or get lost. So I've had to watch that, but I'm a walker, and and I do walking meditation. I am an aspiring singer, and I cannot sing at all. I love music. I cannot sing at all. Absolutely.
But it's good to know your limitations. Good to know your limitations.
And I just lately, I've given myself permission to just sing anyway when I want to sing. So I can't sing. There's some other things I do okay, but I can't sing. But I love music. I even love the sound of my off-key singing and flat key. And so I love embracing that side of me that is okay just being who I am. I love to sing, so I'm going to sing, and singing to myself and hearing myself. I think I sing better in the bathroom. Because I think someone who knows music says it's because probably of the acoustics, but so let me stop there for starters.
Okay, that sounds fair. So I am also wondering what comes to mind as a particular event or a set of circumstances from some point in your life that you would say has influenced you significantly.
One that comes to mind, I think my childhood in general, growing up in a family of 4 boys, and I was the only girl in that family and in the middle, and having a very special relationship with my dad, and a very special relationship with my mom, even though the kinds of interactions, I would have with one was different from the interactions with the other. So it's my childhood in general, and I say that because I think that the seeds of who I am were planted. My dad, I remember, I have a visual memory, and I can remember when my dad was teaching me to ride a tricycle. And I must have done something wrong. I don't know all the details, but I think he either yelled at me or tapped me on my hand or something like that. And he began to cry right after that. I don't know what happened, but he said, I will never hit you again in life. And he never did. So that said a lot to me about who my dad was, the kind of values he had, how sort of the context that he wanted to set for me about how I should be in the world, how others should treat me in the world, how men should treat me in the world. And given that I had 4 brothers, really we had some standards of interaction and relative to me in terms of boundaries, and it was gender related, but at that time, she's a girl when I say that, and things like that. But I think that it was helpful, very meaningful for me. And then there's my mom, who really sought to prepare me again. Probably, I'm thinking now as I speak along gender lines about how I should be in the world. She had some sayings that I remember that one of those sayings, because I make meaning out of it, because I was the only girl, and I sort of had more degrees of freedom to do things because I was a girl. My mom, one of the things she would say most often, or the one I remember most, is, "Don't be so unnecessary." Her nickname for me was Prissy. I don't think I ever heard my mom call me Mary Ann. She would always call me Prissy because I was rather prissy. That's how. There was something about me that she sort of wanted to reinforce my energy or wanted me to shape me that way. And it's also maybe that's the way I was in the world. But sometimes I would get on hand, and she would say, "Don't be so unnecessary. Stop being so unnecessary." It's like, no, when it's you've gotten your point across. That's how I took it away. And she would also say, "I'm going to teach you common sense about how to be in the world. You're very smart." I was a good student. And sometimes I would think, because I got a good grade in school, and maybe it spilled over in terms of my attitude at home, she would say, "Okay, but let me just give you a lesson in common sense right now." And I would love your smiling as I say that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So is being unnecessary, can I translate that as like being too much?
Yeah, being too much. And teaching you common sense is like, it's good that you're learning from the books, but let me teach you some of life's lessons. And I just love that about my mom, because those life lessons have been the ones that I have been more guided or steered by or relied upon than I have the book lessons, to be honest. And I also know the "don't be so unnecessary" is a way of my staying in awareness of myself, like listening to myself, managing myself in a way not to censor myself or things like, but just keep staying awareness, and don't be unnecessary. Know when enough is enough, when you've got your point across. So.
Yeah, I learned the word prudence. I did not know it in English. I learned it when I came to Mexico, and it's a value. I was like, oh, okay. I had to learn that.
Yeah.
I had to learn a lot about prudence and retroflexion. So
yes.
Yeah.
Therefore, the really, what I remember about my first lesson in learning to ride my tricycle, and also the lessons of my mother.
Okay. So you've talked about your mom and your dad. Would you say that there's somebody else who is a significant influence in your life?
In terms professionally, probably Dave Cole, who was my professor at Case Western Reserve University when I was studying there. And his teachings on experiential learning, how he, even though I don't think there was a formal mentorship, just learning from Dave, probably my first lesson in learning. I loved his learning theory, experiential learning theory. And I loved it because of its holistic perspective. One of the things that we're doing in our Gestalt program, the iGold program, is that we're trying to figure out how to continue the program given this period of time with, as the vaccination, given the pandemic is being rolled out, of course, it's not equitable. And we were thinking, do we go ahead? Do we not? Do we just go virtual? And when I say we, John O'Hanifan and I are the co-chairs of that program. It was founded with John O and Chantel, all positive people in my life, Chantel Wiley and John Incombe. And we decided just last week in a conversation, John O and I was saying, well, we believe in health equity. We know that, but we don't have as much influence, probably none, in terms of the vaccination and its rollout. But we came up on this thing. I said, John, we can't do health equity, but we can do learning equity. So why don't we, for those who can show up, will be on site face-to-face, and those who can't show up or don't want to show up, we're going to say we're going to deliver the program in a way where they'll get, even though it's being delivered through a different medium, we want to give you the same teachings with the same content. And then at some point we'll bring the two communities together. So this idea of learning and learning equity was instilled in me by Dave Cove and his theory, because his experiential learning theory, building on theorists from Gestalt, Kurt Lewin, just all educators, it says that there's no one best way to learn. So I got the whole idea of learning equity from that. He really said there's nothing wrong with learning in a cognitive manner, but reflection is a way to learn. Taking action is a way to learn, and also learning affectively by engaging with others. So the whole idea of learning equity and learning holistically greatly influence how I think about the world, how I think about training and education, and that comes from Dave Cove.
Okay. So I want to go back to one of the first things that you said about how you identify yourself. How have you come to understand and experience yourself within your gender or as a woman?
That I am female, of course, it's a social construction that the world puts on. That's the part of my identity. And I've come to understand, first of all, probably more than anything, sort of the limits that the world puts on me because of how I look, how they perceive that I am, and how I internalize that and what it means for me. It's as if, it's interesting that you start with gender, because I don't always start with gender as my identity.
Yeah, the first thing you said was a Black woman.
Yeah, I am not white as defined by the world. So I know what I'm aware of. First of all, how I see myself, and then I've become aware because of my interactions in the world, just generally how the world sees me, and I've had to negotiate that. Like, I know I can do more than cook, or I know I can teach a theory just as well as when I was a little girl, I could teach I mean, I was a math and physics major going into university, but some people didn't know that. They just thought she's a girl because I would be dressed in a particular way. So even though I held myself as comparable and talent and skill and knowledge in some aspects of life, because I was a girl, and it started early, the world didn't hold me that way. So I had to learn how to negotiate that sort of gap in knowledge of self and sense of self with how the world perceived me.
Yeah. And I mean, this is what I said when I run into more and more people in 200 interviews later, being aware of my ignorance is that when we started this project, honestly, in my own sort of identity development, I didn't know how to ask. And so we haven't integrated it in asking people about their experience of color and race. Mm-hmm. I didn't know how to ask those questions. I did not know how to integrate even a question about gender identity.
Well, what led to your asking me today?
Just because I know that you put that first, and then you pointed out that I went to the second word and not the first one.
Yeah.
So I don't know how to have some of these conversations because there are things that I didn't know until I started talking to people.
And it's again back to one of my favorite words, you're learning. And yeah, you're learning. I did wonder when, as I prepared, I didn't prepare a lot, but I did get myself sort of grounded and anchored. How many people of color are part of the pool? Is it, how many?
There's 230. I haven't done the breakdown, but I started looking at the pictures. It was a visual impact. I started looking at the mosaic and I went, holy shit, it's white in here. And it was just such a reflection of my universe, Camila's universe, and a large part of the Gestalt universe. And I started deliberately making choices to ask for more diverse references and recommendations because I realized I was trained in Mexico, so I was not socialized with Black Americans. I was certainly not socialized with any African teachers. And I was like, okay, so I don't even know where to go. And the people who I noticed at conferences were over 90% white and over 60. And so I was like, wow, I'm in an old white universe. And I'm really interested in meeting the younger trainees who were not there at the beginning when it was almost, as far as I know, an exclusively white practice. So I can't change the field, but I can definitely change the choices of who I focus on with the interviews. So it is a deliberate choice. But yeah. So my awkward question is there anything that you would like to say about yourself and your racial identity, your color? I don't know how to ask the question.
Well, I would tell you what's coming up for me. It's coming up for me that I may start with the race, the gender identity, but there are other aspects of who I am. And one of those is that I know Gestalt based on the way it was taught to me from the Cleveland School. I've edited a book. So even though I may be, because of my introversion, hesitant and wanting to sit back, I feel because of who I am and how I look, I do have an aspect of my identity that allows me to do this, to have an interview where other people will see me. I become maybe an influencer in that way. Someone say, I can do what she does. so I take on some of the responsibility of being, of having an identity, aspects of my identity, but I also know that where there are elements of power, where I can participate, I will use that power.
Mm-hmm. And that is one of the questions that I do ask, and people weave in different parts is, how have you experienced, or how do you understand privilege and power in your life as a human being?
I came to understand privilege and power because of a lack of knowledge, out of ignorance. Growing up in Montgomery, Alabama, the southern part of the United States, Montgomery was the first capital of the Confederacy before I think it moved to Richmond, Virginia. In my neighborhood, I grew up lower middle class. Even some people will say you weren't even middle class. But because of the way I was raised, and my husband and I were brought up in the same community, literally the same community, we did not know that we were so disadvantaged in those aspects of our lives where there was disadvantage, because we were happy children. We lived in a house, we had a yard, we were brought up in a community that was a village that raised all of us. Everyone was a parent. So life was good for us. It was only when I would venture out of the safe confines of that village and even to the broader world that I realized, oh, my goodness, relatively, we were deprived. I saw the relative deprivation once I came outside. When I was there, inside of that precious and protective and safe cocoon, even though after a while it wasn't safe because hate permeated the boundaries and came in. But it was, I realized when I became a citizen of the world that my power became even more limited because of the way I look. But I was not afforded the assumption of being the teacher when I would walk into a classroom teaching a course, when I would have a person who was white as my teaching assistant. The assumption was that person is the teacher. So the learning sort of the limits of my power, again, I may have been assigned formal power. In the world, it only goes so far.
Okay. So another question, and you say Montgomery, Alabama, and I'm trying to do some math. Can I ask about your age and how you're experiencing your age and what that means about what times you've grown up in, or how you find yourself in life in terms of age now?
For age, one of the things that has become, so my age is much more figural for me. It's when the pandemic began, I said to some friends, because there was people over 65, over 60, some places 55, 60, 65. If you're over that age, you are the ones who are stressing the system. You're the ones who are causing the illnesses and needing all of the medical attention. And I wondered, I said, in our work, when we show up now, will age be another factor that we have to be mindful of? Things have shifted a bit, but I've had a struggle with what gets projected onto me. Even when I was young, I did not want to tell my age. I don't like telling my age. Either people are surprised or they think I'm too young. But when I was coming up, when I was coming up and I began teaching, people would say, "Oh, you're too young to be teaching Gestalt. You don't. What do you know? You don't have enough life lessons." And now I wonder, you're too old to teach Gestalt. So I say,
there's a very small sweet spot in there then.
Yeah, what's the sweet spot? Or I'll get, "Oh, you're that age? What do you do?" So I have this hesitation, to be honest, about Heather, about age. That's one thing I can, I can't control it, but when I want to share my age, I share my age. When I don't want to share my age, I don't share my age. I just leave that for people to project. It's unlike race and gender.
Mm-hmm.
I don't have as much control.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not asking for a number. Honestly, I'm curious about people's relationship with their age when I ask this. So,
are you hearing what it means for me?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm getting a very clear sense of that. So I appreciate your answer.
And I will tell you, as the pandemic continued, I began to reflect on, I'm in a particular stage of life, and sort of sitting back and taking notice, doing an inventory of, if you will, am I where I want to be? Where do I want to be? Have I lived a life worth living, doing something that I love to do? For the most part, it is what it is. What COVID gave to me is I decided to do some things to get to know myself. Remember, I talked about getting to know myself. One of the things that I did, I said, I'm not going to dye my hair. I want to see. You can see the gray. I want to see.
This is COVID right here.
I want to see what I look like. So I touched up my eyebrows today, and I put lipstick on, but I don't do that. My lipstick, this is the thing. I will put a bit of lipstick, but I'm not using as much. And I was when I opened up the tube, I can smell, oh, it's old because I haven't been using it. The other thing that I did that's age related, I decided to, because when I say we, my husband and I were in Alabama from the end of January through September in a house that we have there in Alabama. I mean, not a condo downtown Chicago. And I decided, of course, I couldn't go to the beauty salon to get my hair done. So I was doing my hair. So I let my hair be natural. I don't know, I think there's a video with my hair just natural. I would just wash it and just condition it and let it go. And I enjoyed that. I enjoyed it until it got to the point where I needed to clip the ends and things like that. But there was something about it was age related that I decided to, who am I? After all these years of just working so much, traveling so much, having someone else take care of my hair, just who am I? Doing my nails, I have no, who am I? And so I have a sense of who am I? I'd never had an idea of how much gray hair do I have, really? And it is what it is. So I am, age has a lot to do with mortality for me too. If I did not contract COVID, I'm fortunate in that respect. If I did, I was asymptomatic. I don't know. But I thought if I come down with COVID, it's a possibility because there were so many unknowns and things were so dynamic. And again, it had to do with, okay, I've lived a long life, and I had just lost 2 brothers in 2018, the end of 2018. Within span of 45 days, I lost one brother November 9th, and then the other brother December 23rd. And between the 2 of them, I lost my godmother. So it was a lot of loss in my life. And of course, that sent me thinking about my own life and also dying in death, to be quite honest.
Did you come to any conclusions on where you are about that?
Yes, I am where I am. I feel I've just had a wonderful life. I have just had a wonderful life. I have a wonderful partner, wonderful family. If it happens, if I pass on today, well, of course I can't do anything about it. But at this point, while I'm in this realm, I'm thinking I'm okay with what my life has been about. Even though there's some things I didn't do. I never learned to play the piano. I took piano lessons so many times. I just could never master the piano. And I love the piano. I play a little bit, but not as well as I would like to. I didn't become an actress because that was I sort of, what do you want to be when you grow up? I wanted to be an actress. And I think that has a lot to do with my ability to be a socialized extrovert. That if I go and roll, I'm okay. I can do this. I used to do that when I was I worked in corporate America and was a vice president and the ranking woman of color. I was the highest ranking woman of color in a company of about 25,000 people. So I knew I had some responsibility, and there was I would have to attend gatherings and luncheons and meetings. And the way I managed that is I would go and roll. I would just step into the role of being a vice president. And I would be okay. And my interactions would be genuine. It's just that I had to sort of get myself set that way, my mindset that way, to be able to do it and stay engaged, stay genuine. So it took some work. So my aspirations of being an actress sort of paid off because I did do some acting coming up in high school. My mother was a stage mother too.
Oh, okay.
I was always reciting poetry and acting and things of that nature.
Well, some of my favorite people are theater people. So
really,
yeah.
What is it about theater people?
I don't know. I think it's thinking what you described for me is kind of just about the intentionality of stepping into a role, but being authentic.
Yes.
And just having that authentic presence and understanding, movement and motivation. And if it doesn't come from a real place, it doesn't make any sense. It's absurd, right?
Yeah.
So I've always,
Fritz Perl was in the theater. I mean, the empty chair comes from the theater. Yep. So you said authenticity. I don't know if I can be genuine. I align how I engage with others in a way that's consistent with my values. So pretense is not consistent with my values. So I don't engage in a pretentious way.
Right. That makes sense.
Yeah.
No, and when you've said several times about being an introvert, the first time you said it, I just instantly imagined a really rich, deep inner life, and sort of the bringing that out in pieces as an extrovert, but that's just completely in my imagination. So.
When you say inner life, what do you mean? Say more about
I don't know. I'm just always curious about what's going on, within the introvert. And
I do have did you say rich? I don't know what
a rich inner life.
Yeah, I do have a rich inner life. And it's so interesting that you say that, because I told you that I do walking meditation, even when I'm out in the world. I'm in my inner space.
Mm-hmm.
I often tell the story about an assistant who I think we would report to work at 8. And after a while, she told me, it was early on in our relationship when I'd taken on the job and she was a direct report. And she asked me, she said, Marianne, why don't you come in 30 minutes or an hour later? And I said, why? She said, because when you come in, when we're here at the same time, you just rattle off these things to be done. She said, because I want to do them. She was a doer. That was her learning and problem solving style. She says, as I'm trying to get settled, and then you have these, you have these things, and as my manager, I want to take care of them. And it made sense to me what she was saying to me, because overnight, I gained all this clarity. I made contact with myself left and right. Oh, I have these moments, and I would get in the office and I would say, let's do this way. And let's do that. Let's. And I was thinking, when you mentioned that, Heather, it was, that's because of, I have a rich, I love that language. I have such a inner life.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Well, I do want to switch up a little bit some of the questions, because this is very human, and it's humans of Gestalt. So I am curious where Gestalt comes into your life, how you met, how you found it. How did that happen? Because you math and physics and theater and corporate America. Where's Gestalt?
This is so interesting. I did not go the theater way, of course. It's obvious. And I decided that was not what I really wanted. I didn't think I would make it in that world because of how I look, and that's another conversation. But I was, on my high school transcript, it was actress and it was teacher. And I went to undergrad as a math major and a physics minor. Didn't want to do that change from math to math education. I don't want to do that. And then I was thinking, what do I want to do? I know how to do numbers. Then I went in an accounting degree. And my university, Tuskegee University in Alabama, did not offer an accounting degree, but did offer a business management degree, and allowed me to take all of the accounting courses. So as part of that business management degree, I had to do an independent study. And my independent study was interviewing the head of facilities, the campus facilities,
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know what I interviewed him about, But it was that interview, I came away like, oh, I enjoyed interviewing him. I enjoyed learning about how people experience their job. And that was my entry into the people side of business. I finished my degree in business management, where I learned a lot about business, especially marketing. I began interested in things like um, um, diminishing returns, and when we just the human side of business began to get my interest, my thinking. I went on to start an MBA in accounting. And I was only going part-time, Heather. And I learned, I decided I can't go to school like this. I want to devote, I'm a learner. I want to devote all my time. And I learned about a fellowship that was being offered, and I had to interview for it, and I interviewed, and I got a call that afternoon after I returned home that I was one of the two recipients. And it was odd that the person who contacted me, I guess the chair of this board, said, "We know you're working on your MBA in accounting. However," he says, "we are looking for people of color to go into psychology." And he said, "Would you be interested in that?" He says, we're not putting any pressure. You have the fellowship." And I thought, okay, they're going to pay for my master's degree. I can always finish my MBA in accounting. I'm going to study this human side because I had gotten this little interest from this internship. I never did finish my MBA in accounting, but I did finish. I was counseling and human resources, where I was trained, my first training as a therapist and in group process, my T group of the training group. But it was in that course that I learned theories of psychotherapy. And Gestalt was one, but not big, because there wasn't, Fritz Perls was not around anymore. And Gestalt was not included in academic programs as much, but that was my first introduction. When I went on to study for my PhD at Case, Western Reserve University in Cleveland, after my first year, John Carter wanted to apply appreciative inquiry, use it as part of an action research study for his client. He had clients in the US and clients in Canada, and he wanted a researcher. So David Cooperrider was a professor at Case. In fact, David Cooperrider was my faculty advisor. Every first year student was assigned to a faculty. That's how I got into appreciative inquiry. As David was finishing his dissertation, he said, "Would you like to go and work with us, interview a few people as the post study?" So I didn't know what I was doing. I was just a student.
Okay.
So John Carter, for this project, selected me to be his researcher. David Cooperrider was the faculty advisor. And of course, John was he was the consultant. When I began working with John, John said, "I want you to go to the Gestalt Institute of Cleveland and take the personal growth workshop." It's the group workshop. "Because I want you to get an idea of what is the context of my work, and it's Gestalt." And I said, "Oh gosh, I'll really learn about Gestalt now." And that's how I was introduced to Gestalt. John Carter introduced me. I was first introduced in my master's program, but really understanding the practice of Gestalt was through John Carter at the Gestalt Institute of Cleveland, and that project with David Cooperrider and John Carter.
And so what did you find in Gestalt?
I found self-awareness. It was this additional personal growth, because in my master's program, I was becoming more knowledgeable about self, because of course in most programs in counseling, psychotherapy, social work, you have to begin with self. So that work was continuing, getting to know myself. But what Gestalt did, beyond getting to know myself, how to use myself, and beyond use of self, is the lovely thing about presence. It's like this exquisite, it's not only, you're not detached, you're there. It goes beyond that. It is how to, as Edwin Nevis would say, how to establish or create a compelling presence where you make the difference. And I was thinking it's so easy if I work from awareness. If, which is what my mom had already begun, don't get, so I'm getting really more learning about the value of awareness and how to use that awareness to intervene and to impact systems, hopefully in a positive manner. So it was this idea of awareness and presence.
Okay, and within your work in Gestalt, I know it's still ongoing, but I'm curious what you say that you do with it, or how you've used it and what you've done.
It is, along with continuous learning from Cove, and then this sort of more in-depth introduction with John Carter, and then later the teachings of Elaine Kepner and Edwin Nevis and Gwen Wade and all the other Claire Stracker teachers at the Gestalt Institute. I began doing my work differently. I began, and it helps an introvert, because all I have to do is be and make decisions, being very intentional about, in that state of being, what do I want to do with myself to influence the system? That's what it is. It's such a comfortable way to do my work, being that I'm introverted. It's observing, just attending, noticing, making meaning, and being very intentional about how I use myself, or not doing anything, because not doing anything is also an intentional intervention. So I've begun to teach about it. I've begun to write about it, and hopefully model that, just by how I show up, how I even talk about my race and gender, how I just, that's what I love about Gestalt, and how I use it.
And what would you say that you've run up against that you consider to be challenges?
So what is, one of the things in terms of Gestalt's reputation, or the reputation that I contribute, Gestalt's reputation that I contribute to, is that it's not action oriented. It's not practical. It's not scientific. That's why I've been writing about it and wanting to do even some research on it. It's like making it, expanding it beyond just practice and intervention. There is a science behind it. So when I learned early on that either Gestalt is dated, you're not doing anything, or because of how Fritz Perls was perceived, where's the science? And what I do is I go back to the work at the Berlin School. And I talked about Lewin's theory of the Gestalt psychologist, the work he did with the Gestalt psychologist, and his seminal theory of psychodynamics, where we get the Zeigarnik effect. And he was working with Bluma, Zeigarnik, and the other students there. And all of his theories about systems, behavior is a function of the person and environment. I call that the human systems theory, even though we go to general systems theory, we hold that, but Lewin had a systems theory, and his theory about groups, his theory about life space, and just his theories about leadership. All of the work when I get those challenges about you're not legitimate because you just practice, you're not legitimate because you don't have a lot of science behind you, I go to let me show you the science. Mm-hmm. And it still holds. Of course, I'm biased.
True. And I'm wondering, on the other side of those challenges, I mean, those seem to be ways that people challenge you. Would you say that there's a challenge that you have run into, like a stumbling block in your own work, where you've said, oh God,
I tell you what you're coming up against now. You're coming up against age, because I think that my age gets me out of those challenges now, because I'm okay with saying I don't know. I'm okay saying, oh, I messed up that time. Let me go back. I'm okay with saying, oh gosh, I hurt you. I didn't intend to hurt you, but that's not good enough. I'm going to accept accountability for it. So age, I've sort of learned how to manage those now. Early on, I would, when I didn't know, not enough, but when I was learning Gestalt, it's like I would think that I would have to have something very sophisticated if I got pushback and I'm sitting up. If I got pushback in a session and what do I do? They don't want to do what I want them to do. Oh, I misread that. And there would be people, my teachers, one of my teachers, I'm talking about who influenced me, I would see Claire Stratford working, and she would do her work in such really, these really uncontaminated interventions that were so simple, but yet so powerful. And I learned how to, part of what I've because I can get out of them now, I know how to handle without carrying shame, like I'm not good, I just failed, was because of how I saw Claire working. She didn't sit down to teach me anything. She modeled a way of being and how to manage conflict and challenges. And when you get stuck, I got that from Claire Stratford.
Okay. So another piece that I would like to know about, this is a little bit about pride, and it's if there's some particular achievements or moments that have stayed with you as peak experiences, either achievements or clinical moments or moments in your own training even.
I take pride in how I continue to use my learning and understanding of Gestalt to next levels. I used to teach in the international program from the Gestalt Institute of Cleveland. We ended that some years ago, and there was a request, why don't you continue the program? And I've been creative in finding ways to do that without taking away from somebody else's work. Like I've been trying to, how can I innovate? How can I adapt? I've been very proud of that. One of the things I'm really proud of is that for our Gestalt program, the pandemic intervened and we had to stop the program. We're an international program, and we were scheduled to go to Singapore and to Italy. And of course, we can't do that. And we had to figure out a way to keep the delegates engaged. Since we were scheduled to end the program last September 2020, and we decided to adapt to a virtual module, and we did that, and we did some innovative things. I am really proud. It took a lot of risk. I was afraid. We didn't know if we would be successful. So I'm taking pride, like in recent memory. That's one of the things, how we've adapted that program and innovated. The other thing is, I find myself, I'm proud that I do speak up about my race and gender more. Before the pandemic and all the things that have come to our attention around #MeToo, Black Lives Matter, I'm political, but I hold my politics differently. And to even come on this and talk about my race and gender, I'm proud that I can, that I'm doing that. And I'm doing it in a way that works for me. I'm especially proud about that.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And you've been very gracious with my clumsiness as well. So I am wondering, do you feel like you're part of a Gestalt community? Does that mean anything to you?
Gestalt community?
Mm-hmm.
Yes, I am part of sort of the Cleveland, well, I started in that community. I feel I'm associated with it, I'm connected with it. Then there's sort of the community of the international program that came out of the Cleveland School. I'm part of that, even though I'm not as active with the Cleveland School because I don't live in Cleveland anymore. And after I left Cleveland, I went into corporate America. And then I came out and got back to Gestalt again. I'm not active in the broader community. Somehow, I think Chantel Ayokin suggested that you have a conversation. So I am part of the community. I'm not active, but I do feel I'm a part. Some of the people on your website, I don't know, but that's okay. Mm-hmm. It's okay. I'm so pleased there's so many.
Yeah, I do have to say that you are very appreciated by many people that I've spoken to, not just Chantel and Jochen.
Oh,
so your name has come up many times, actually.
Thank you.
I was very curious about the woman behind this presence that comes through. So, oh darn, I had a thought and it's gone.
Oh, I'm so glad. I love that.
It's all the time. Well, it's interesting because I sort of switched up the wording, asking, things that you were proud of, but I'm also curious if you have any favorite stories that have stayed with you about experiences in any position in this Gestalt world, as a trainer, trainee, clinician. Does any particular moment come to mind that stays with you?
I remember in my program in the Cleveland, when I was in the Cleveland OSD program, Organization Systems Development Program, one of the first community sessions, I think there were about 38 of us in that class. It was a large class. And we were in community and something was going on. And I cried in community. I don't know where it came from. I can't remember what happened, but part of my memory is visual. I have a visual memory. I can see as I've been talking to you where I was sitting. I was sitting in a window in the back and something was said and I was touched, I was moved. And that was a pivotal moment. I said, there's something here about this Gestalt stuff that's going to be useful for me. And so that's when I'm And I tell you another one. I did a presentation, I think we were in Israel, and I was teaching the traditional Gestalt resistances, the 6 resistances. And somehow I just felt I was not clear enough. And after the presentation, I had 2 people who were professors from a different country and publishing a book and said, we like what you did, would you write an article about it? I was thinking, whoa, oh, okay, maybe I was more clear than I thought I was. I was clearer than I thought I was. All my work, all my teachers at Gestalt, John Carter, number one, because he introduced me, and Edwin Neves, and Gwen Wade Claire, my colleague, John O'Hannafin, who's been my partner. It's very special. Jono and I have a very, very special relationship. We're just lifelong partners. We tell our spouses that we're married, we're just married in distance. So my relationship with Jono was just so special. So I'm going off now. I think I've just become so relaxed and I'm not even paying attention to what you want to say.
No, it was, if you have favorite stories, and for me, that makes sense. That comes to connection.
Another favorite story. Gwen Wade, Dr. Gwen Wade. She's a double doctor, doctor. And I would be in class. She was my professor in Gestalt. I might call her professor, but my teacher in Gestalt. And I would have those moments when I would say something and I would get no reaction out of it. And then someone, maybe even sometime later or a day later, would say the same thing and would get like, wow, that's so great. And I talked to Gwen about it. And the special moment for me was when she was saying, she told me sometimes the system is not ready. Sometimes because you are an introvert, your comments, your statements can be so sanitized they don't give enough context. I can speak in sound bites, when I'm, especially in a new group, I get in there and I get out. That's what I teach in Gestalt. You're talking about.
They're all still sitting there trying to unpack what you said.
Yeah. And so they can't react. And she was so good to provide that support and teaching for me about, again, back to something you and I talked about at the beginning of our time, my sense of myself and how the world also, it's an interaction, my sense of myself and then the world's sense of me. She helped me to learn that and make sense out of that in a very supportive and loving and caring way.
Wow. Oh, I'm also very relaxed now too. I do have to eventually bring this to a close. So I guess I should just ask if there's anything else that you would like to add at this point. I'm just really appreciating this conversation. But is there any part of yourself that you feel is missing or anything else? Oh, I didn't ask you this. There we go. What's next? If you ever get let out of your house again, what's next for you and what's next for Gestalt?
I am trying to finish a leadership book that should have been finished right around the time my brothers passed, but I could not do it. I did not realize I was grieving so deeply with the loss of my 2 brothers and my godmother. And I have a newfound respect for loss and the process of grieving. So my heart goes out to people who lost loved ones. Because I had lost loved ones before, but those were big ones. I think because there were like 3 of them. But I'm trying to finish that book. And then I'm trying to decide the way forward for me in Gestalt. If I want to begin pulling back, if I want to continue teaching in a program, if I just want to do something, well, virtual is brought to mind. Do I want to just do virtual? We probably will go back to hybrid model, and some people will appreciate virtual learning and some others won't, but I'm trying to figure out what I want to do. I do want to spend more time with my husband and my family. That has become keenly aware for a number of reasons because of the losses that the world has experienced. But I've enjoyed being with my husband, getting to know him. We have never been together consecutively every day for, I think we're going into our 15th month. Of course, at first we had to navigate the space, and we were fortunate enough to sell our home in Alabama. And then we come to the smaller place here, but we've learned to, negotiate our time. He's an introvert, I'm an introvert, and it's been good. It's been
so
good.
You can introvert together. That's
we
lovely.
We introvert together, but what's next for me is I really want to spend more time with my husband. I really do. And my family. So I probably am prioritizing my life. That we always say family comes first. It's really going to be that way. I'm making sure if I finish this book, it's going to be that way because I've enjoyed just being with me and then with him and the two of us. It's just been so fun. It's brought a bit of romance back to our relationship, and we know how to argue now.
That is so nice to hear, honestly.
It's not as if we don't disagree. We had one before I came on. I said, I gotta go. I gotta do my
Otherwise, she's just gonna keep bugging me.
I know. I said, can we agree to disagree, honey? I gotta go. but and then I will probably try to do a bit more writing, but not a book. I did the edited book on Gestalt, and now I'm doing this book is an author book, which is much more difficult than maybe little things. I'll write, yeah.
And so what's next for Gestalt from your perspective?
I think we are on the upswing. I do. All the books, Dorothy Semenovich and Mary, I can't think of some other, writing this series, and people are inviting us to speak. The ODN network, I'm seeing Gestalt practitioners at their conferences. The things are going up for us. And I really want to try to do some research. I really do. To maybe replicate some studies to make them, update to the 21st century. But I think we're on the upswing. And I'm so appreciative. Again, I'm back. I'm a grateful human being that you asked me to participate. And I am grateful that you know the value of Gestalt, obviously, you see the value and you're taking some action. That's why I did the book, and I'm going to try to continue doing what I do at the same time that I'm spending time with my hubby.
Wonderful. Well, I know I like a closed Gestalt, so if it comes back to gratitude, is that an okay place to leave it? That's also where I am. I'm just really appreciating having spent this time with you and everything that you've shared.
I'm good. I'm good. This has been It's been fun. I found myself loosening up as we went along. And had some humor, and I hope you kind of have what you want.
Absolutely. This has been wonderful. Thank you.